a time where people really thought people's pockets would close up, shrink up, disappear. No one would be interested in giving. Our communities proved everyone wrong. I'm Jean Peterson. I'm the Student Engagement Manager at Feenix, and basically I'm in charge of looking after the relationship that we have with our universities and our students and the organization, and making sure that our goal of servicing students is done well, and that the relationships are strengthened year on year. The history of Feenix is a really beautiful story. So how it began was, it was a response to Fees Must Fall that took place in 2015 and 2016, when we really saw the impact that not having access to education had on students and the struggle they were going through. So we wanted to be a part of the solution. When we realized that there weren't enough resources sitting with government in order to make free education a reality, Feenix stepped in and we said, how do we leverage off of Ubuntu, off of South Africa wanting to stand together and contribute in their own way? How do we bring that crowdfunding spirit together to make education possible? So what happened was we developed this crowdfunding platform which provided a tool for students to legitimize their fundraising efforts, as well as a channel for everyday individuals that wanted to make a difference, and even small to medium enterprises, in order to find those students and make that meaningful donation. And that's how Feenix birthed. And since then we've been able to, through the giving of our communities, raise 76 million rand, which has gone to over 2,000 students. And I think to reach a feat like that in just under 4 years is pretty phenomenal, and we're so grateful to our communities that have supported our students along the way. I got scouted. Feenix basically stole me. I was working for government at the time, specializing in youth development programs citywide, and they wanted a student engagement manager just to help really look after those relationships. So I came on board, and I think because we're such a young, diverse team that really cares about education, we all have our own journey with not having the funds to really pursue the careers we wanted to, and those struggles we can relate. Working for a non-profit, you do it because you're passionate about it, and I wanted to be a part of such a team that believed in social impact, and here we are. So what were our everyday life looked like pre-COVID was, our focus is always to how do we use the tech platform, the crowdfunding platform that Feenix is, to connect students who need those funds and want to fundraise for their studies, and use it in a legitimate way and connect them to donors. So that's what we were doing. We were equipping students on how to fundraise, how to do it online, how to expand their network, and then also connecting everyday people that wanted to make a contribution. Then COVID happened, and then all of a sudden things that students had access to, online resources or campus resources, and all of a sudden that was shut down. People were retrenched. People were considering, do they have the money to give? And so things kind of paused for us a little bit, and we needed to rethink, how do we still continue to make an impact and make sure that access to education isn't dependent on wealth, but really just adjust to the time that we found ourselves in. If we look at what the state of education looked like pre-lockdown, what was interesting is that in the beginning of 2020, we actually did a research study with our students to understand their thrive drivers. What was it that distinguished students between just surviving to really thriving in their academics? And what we found was that 64% of our students were living on residence, which means they relied on university resources. They relied on the computer labs. They relied on access to lecture venues. We had students that were sleeping in lecture halls because they didn't have res and they didn't have other accommodation. According to the research that we did, only 8% of students reported to actually have access to all the resources they needed to be able to, study online independent of assistance. And so we knew that after lockdown we were looking at a great deficit in terms of the resources students needed to continue their studies and do well and do their best. Post-COVID, come lockdown, where all resources shut down, and students all of a sudden had to shift to this concept of online learning and distance learning with no resources to actually do it. Universities themselves, especially the ones that were previously disadvantaged, they were struggling on how do they get the funding to get students laptops, to get them data, to support them just in terms of basic food. For example, one of our students, I mean, he has a phenomenal story, Lunga. He was working on campus, and the money that he got from working on campus, he was using to pay for his food expenses. Now all of a sudden that resource isn't there for him.
My name is Lunga Sello. I'm doing my last year now in civil engineering at CPUT. After my trip in the Eastern Cape, I went to UKZN. I did my undergrad there in geology, but I couldn't find a job, so I started civil engineering at CPUT because I thought that was going to give me a better chance of getting a job. So in 2018, when I was doing my first year at CPUT, I didn't have any funding, I didn't have NSFAS, I didn't have a bursary. So while I was online looking for funding, came upon Feenix as an organization, so I applied, and luckily they replied within a few weeks, and luckily that year I did get funding. To be honest, in 2018 I didn't have any hope for funding. I didn't have any hope. If Feenix didn't come through that year, probably I wouldn't have been able to register in 2019. From 2018 till early last year, I was working at a computer lab. As a way, that's how I bought my meals, basically. So beginning of COVID, now we couldn't go to campus anymore, so that had to be cancelled. So now there was no money coming in. And unfortunately that time I was still finishing my second year modules, so I couldn't qualify for Cap the Gap campaign, but I did let the team know about it, and luckily I got an interview. They hooked me up with an interview with a UK company, and I was able to work for them remotely. I think beginning of August last year up until the end of last year.
For us, during that period, we said we want to connect students to resources, so we need to also put our actions where our mouth is and start to go outside of the norm of what we were doing. So before we were assisting students with, their tuition, but now we realized there was this gap in digital access. So we were able to put together in 6 weeks a campaign called #CapTheGap, and it was really about how do we get our communities that want to give to start sponsoring students for laptops, data and food vouchers, so that they could have what they needed to continue their studies. And through that campaign, which ran for 3 months, we were able to raise just over 3.4 million rand, which impacted the lives of over 400 students. So that was a really amazing testament to the power of community for us. So we did a survey recently. We like to do impact surveys just to make sure we're on the right track with our students. And recently what came up is that because of the lockdown period, 7% of students needed to drop out. They just didn't have the resources they needed to continue, which was really sad for us. And we know that had it not been for #CapTheGap, that number would have been far higher. I think knowing that we were able to be a part of 400 students not needing to compromise on the quality of their education, that was really enough for us. We are excited about what lockdown has brought out of our communities. At a time where people really thought people's pockets would close up, shrink up, disappear, no one would be interested in giving, our communities proved everyone wrong. They came together. I mean, to date, we've raised over 76 million rand for over 2,000 students, and that shows the power of giving. So for us, if our communities could get through lockdown, we can get through anything. And we know that partnership is required if this funding crisis is ever not going to be here. If we're going to eradicate, student debt, it requires partnership, it requires communities. The plans for Feenix for the future is just strengthening our partnerships. So to date, we know that raising over 76 million rand to impact over 2,000 student lives, that was the result of partnership. It was, people, communities coming together and contributing towards a cause they all believed in. So for the future, we want to see more collaborations between government and the private sector, and we really believe that through a cohesive collaboration, we can eradicate student debt. Our call to action for Feenix would really be make a difference in a meaningful way and donate to a student. It's great to be able to connect to a person whose story you believe in. We believe that our students are investment worthy, and it's for all of us to be a part of the solution. There's no point in complaining about the state we're in if we're not really doing something to change it. So let's all be a part of the solution, and it takes one donation at a time.